there was nothing that could take away the joy from that day.
But like I said, it was all worth it at the end.
I remember yelling so loud that like, and with everything I had that, you know, I went cross-eyed and just deaf. Like I couldn't hear anything anymore. But yeah, and so that was the best feeling ever.
When I first joined the Rocket Owls, I felt extremely nervous. I didn't think I was qualified for it. But after some time, I got more and more comfortable, and it was a great thing to get me started towards my career. The experience is something I don't think any other community college would ever offer.
When choosing which payload to do, I know that there were only 2 options for this year, and I guess we had been anticipating more of them just because last year I think had 5 different payload options. But I remember that we were split into 2 sub-teams, and one of us had to research rovers and one of us had to research UAVs, and I actually was on the rover team. So, and I also kind of wanted to do rover because I thought it was cool, but I guess rovers are actually pretty common, so the UAV ended up being the way cooler, actually probably more difficult option to go with. And so I think it was a really close vote when our team just decided to do the vote and the UAV won, and yeah, I'm happy I was on the payload team. It was really cool being able to work on the UAV.
I didn't decide on the UAV actually originally. I wanted to do a rover. I think I was maybe one of 2 people that wanted to do a rover. But I got outvoted, and so we went with it. I was originally very scared, nervous about it, but actually got more comfortable with it, more confident as time went by. Luckily, we had some help from some people that were able to give us some advice and tips to make sure it was functioning correctly.
My challenges started with being part of the payload, and yeah, and so I was supposed to, I think the biggest challenge being part of like the people helping out with the payload was coming up with designs, because in the design phase a lot of things sound good, but then as you start engineering and figuring things out, you know, which I guess is my personal struggle being a physics major, I like to think theoretically, and then taking that and making something real with it was kind of that struggle. And then picking up that new role as safety officer came with its own struggles, as safety is a main concern for NASA, and no matter how much you feel like you're doing, you got to keep doing more. Like, they want everything. You got to think about every situation possible, and then even when we're making checklists, it's like, did you forget something? And then if you did, try to make a note of it, because you got to come back to it, and you got to keep going and back at it and back at it. I think that was the biggest part of safety, is like, you don't think about everything, which is a struggle, but you're expected to know, be prepared for any kind of thing, and coming up with mitigations and, you know, and what people should be wearing, how they should be protecting themselves, things like that.
Some of the challenges that we face in the program are definitely working with a group of individuals that you have little to no previous knowledge of. We have a lot of strong personalities on the team, and it's important for us as a smaller team to be effective in our communication and collaboration. In the beginning, it's a bit of an adjustment period, but as we went along, we sort of mediated our issues, understood how each other work, and we became a more functioning team. So that was definitely one of the main challenges of the Rocket Owls.
The hardest thing about communication was realizing that everyone handles stress differently. Me personally, sometimes I just won't talk about it. Other people will just show it straight up. Other people will just like kind of go away from it. But it was just basically learning to understand others.
The team evolved through many struggles. Like every process, there was a little bit of, there's always gonna be, I guess, some sort of difference among members. And then I think once everybody started getting into those roles, and over time as all the team members saw who those roles were going to, I think that's when it started getting better, because it's hard being part of a team that's so small, because we want to help each other, and then sometimes we overstep bounds and people don't like it. And it's been ups and downs. I think for sure we've ended on one of the highest notes that we've gotten for ourselves. I think most of the team members now we're good, we're friends, we talk. Even in Huntsville, we were walking out in the park late at night and just trying to spend time rather than thinking about this project. It kind of understandably went from project and struggling with like, oh, I don't think that design works, or things like that, and people not taking it well, including myself, and things like that. And then coming to at the end, we were just like, well, here's our project, and that's it. We're here to launch. And I think that took a lot of worries off after like everything was just set in stone. I think a lot of us came to terms with it, and that's how it was.
Throughout the project, I think people noticed of how shy and reserved I was, especially through meetings, because I wouldn't say my opinions, my ideas for the project itself. So people in the team would make me, or at least try to make me talk and give my ideas for the project, because I guess they saw that I had some ideas in my head. And I'm grateful for that, people making me talk, because I do have trouble expressing my ideas and my opinions in projects like this one, because this is creating a rocket is pretty intense.
When I first came in to the Rocket Owls, when I was first appointed as a leader by Dr. Ritter, I was definitely excited. I felt like I earned that spot, but I did not see. I thought I knew how to do it. Like, I thought I just had it in me. I definitely did not foresee the challenges that would come with the project, basically with the different personalities that we have. I think the hardest part, in fact, about being a leader is to understand people, understand the personalities that you have to deal with, and understand how they would accept criticism or just any kind of comment from anybody, not just from a leader. For me personally, I felt that being a leader in such a project where you and your peers are on the same level, I think it had its own struggle, since we're all in community college students, we're all on the same level education-wise. So I felt, okay, yes, I am the leader, but what do they think of me? Do they think of me as a leader, or would they think, oh, why is he our leader? Is he better than us, or something like that? I never thought I was better than anybody. As a matter of fact, I learned a lot from experience too. But I genuinely thought that, okay, I would be able to do it. And I think I did it. But I genuinely thought that I knew what to do, like everything. But the truth is, there's only so little that I knew. And there's so much that I learned throughout the journey.
The first time we went out to launch, it was one of the most exciting things I've ever done. And then it wasn't fully successful, so we went back. It wasn't fully successful. The parachute deployed at apogee, meaning it deployed pretty much at the apex. So a few of the times it was really windy and it drifted far, and we had to walk very long distances.
Preparing for the launches was a very challenging thing. We had to make sure we had all the supplies we needed, all the tools we needed, and that we were sharp and ready. We would have to leave very early to head to the launches. At the launches, my primary functions varied as a recovery officer depending on the launch. Sometimes I was in charge of the layout and folding the parachutes and getting those ready. Other times I would be in charge of programming the altimeters and getting the avionics section ready.
The sub skills, I felt like were a mess. A lot of us were learning like what to do. You know, there's a moment where we had worked with FAR 1030 doing that kind of competition, and another team kind of, or you know, the other Rocket Owls who were kind of showing us, guiding us, they kind of handled most of that stuff. So there's a moment where we got out to FAR for the first time and then looked around and we had to do it. So we kind of started picking it up, started you know, trying to figure out who was doing what. And I think for the first few launches, it was really chaotic.
So the launches were, I mean, initially it's really exciting. You're gonna launch your rocket, go out to the desert. You know, it's like a whole thing. You have to drive there. And it is a fun experience. I remember that the first launch, it took a really long time. Just, you know, it was our first launch. It just took a long time. So they're pretty draining, and I think that the fact that we were having so many unsuccessful launches took part of the joy away from it, you know, and it's in that way we were kind of just hoping that it would work. And going there, it got really exhausting because it was every Saturday, especially when I got close to the launch, it was every Saturday, and so it was exhausting, especially when the rocket would drift very far. And I remember those days so vividly. They would drift so far, we'd have to go get it. We were there for a really long time, but actually being there, you know, it's like fun, you know, you're with your team, you're like at this new place, you're gonna launch your rocket, and the teamwork that goes on there is, especially, I remember the first launch, it was so windy, we were like, the guy who was doing the launches wanted to leave, so he was like waiting for us, and we were like trying to get this rocket together to launch, and we did it. There was like, I remember cutting my finger trying to put shear pins in, and like I turn around, somebody has a band-aid ready for me, like, and you just like go on to the next. Everyone was just working together. So yeah, that was a pretty fun experience.
For that last one, I prayed so hard and I almost cried, because I really wanted to see this work so we can launch it at Huntsville. So when I saw that each parachute came out when I was supposed to, I screamed with my teammate, and we ran to the rocket, and it was like, I have no words for that day, because I was just really excited that we had made it work as it was supposed to work.
Scale launch that the team had performed was 2 days before the deadline, before the final extension, and in that flight it was supposed to be a vehicle demonstration flight for the launch vehicle or for the rocket. Also, it would have been a payload demonstration flight for the payload, so that means the payload should or must be in the rocket in order for us to fly it in Alabama, and to fly the payload in the rocket in Alabama as well. So it was two things that we were stressing about. We absolutely needed that final launch to be successful, otherwise we wouldn't even be launching in Alabama. So yeah, we just went to MDARS, to the Mojave Desert, and we did everything we could. We did everything, like at that point, it doesn't matter how nervous you are or how stressed you are, whatever was going on, and in any aspect of your life, the only thing that mattered is what you were doing right then and there, and what you needed to do to make this successful.
When the recovery system finally worked full, there's a moment where I went cross-eyed and deaf because of how loud I was yelling. It's still so happy, you know, when it happened, because we're out there with a vet, and it was just so emotional to actually see everything work. We ran so fast to go see it. It was 7 months. You're working time after time, and it worked. That was a good feeling. It still is. I still, whenever I see that happening, it's always good.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, everybody was at the site. We were just hugging for our first time, hugging some of the team members who've never hugged before. So it's all good. Yeah, we couldn't believe it, but yeah, there's just. I remember yelling so loud that like, and with everything I had that, you know, I went cross-eyed and just deaf. Like I couldn't hear anything anymore. But yeah, and so that was the best feeling ever.
We were all like, oh my, we all like screamed. We were like, wow. we all were just like happy. And Rick was like, hey buddy, the rocket. And the rocket's just like moving across the desert because no one's looking at it. And it's like being dragged across the desert. So we have to go like, run and get it, but and the payload was in there and it was still working, and yeah, it was a good time, and we got out of there before 1 p.m. That was probably the most surprising part of it all.
NASA finally approved our design, and we were able to finally make sure the rocket worked correctly and the recovery finally worked. That was at MDARS, and that was probably obviously the best launch we had, and that was the best feeling I had in a while. And I think in recent memory, that's the best feeling I've ever had. I know everyone got emotional. Weston was jumping like a little kid. Fadi was about to attack me. I felt threatened. But it was a great time, and we had to chase it down, and everything was successful that day. We had one shot, and we made it.
So I've learned a lot of things while being in this program, personal and also a lot of technical things too. Starting with personal, I feel like I've grown a lot of resilience as far as being under pressure and still trying to function normally, going to school, going to work, working in the lab, all of these things. I feel like I can do it all now, you know? And so that's a good feeling.
Any advice I would give to prospective students or people who are interested in joining the Rocket Owls is don't come into this if you're half interested, if you're not willing to give it 110%, 200%. Rocket Owls really, it's not an after school club, it's not any sort of thing you put half of your effort into. You have to be willing to give it 100% of your effort and that.
If I have to give the next generation of Rocket Owls an advice, I think it would be to separate the work, the project, and everything that's related to it from your, maybe I would say your personal life, and also your relationship with your teammates. What I learned personally from this experience is that you do not have to. It's not necessary. It's not a necessity for you to be friends with your teammates. If you guys are friends, then that's amazing. That's great. But if you guys are not particularly as friends, close friends, or whatever, the most important thing about this is to put the project first, and be able to separate that from your relationship with them. Because once you mix your relationship with that person with the work that you have to do, there could be many complications, and those complications could grow and escalate into something that would divide the team into 2 sides or 3 sides, or people would be feeling left out or something. This is not about being friends. It's important to have friends, and it's important to have a support system, but the project itself is not about that. The project is about learning. It's about growing.
So if you're looking to be the next Rocket Owl, gear up. It's gonna be tough, but it's gonna be a long journey, but it all pays off at the end. You're gonna learn stuff about you that you never knew. You're gonna be thrown into situations you never thought you were gonna be thrown into. You're going to deal with class and And I could at least say from my experiences, I think what happened was I was just had to keep up with everything so much that I actually raised my GPA and did better because I was like at it, you know, going from, you know, Rocket Owls. I couldn't see myself not putting that same effort into the classes, and so that still carries over when I'm doing everything. But it's gonna be tough if you're looking into Rocket Owls. I mean, that's what's been said to us, and that's what I'm gonna say to you. But it's doable. So if you keep your head down and work hard, you'll make it.